Hello folks, it's the Pace Chaser again. So I think they must have put something in the water in Grimsby just lately. I'm doing this video in early August 2024. I've been taking still shots of buses in Grimsby for about 4 years and videos for about 2.5, and I've never had a jot of bother. Apart from the odd passerby in a car just shouting things, out the window as they do sometimes, but you get that everywhere. However, just lately I've had 3 instances of problems whilst filming in Grimsby. Towards the end of July, a stagecoach bus pulled up, the driver leaned out the window and started shouting at me that I didn't have permission to take his photograph and various other things and bits and pieces. About a week later I was filming again and another stagecoach driver stuck his middle finger up at me as he drove past. I responded to that by giving him a cheerful wave, which absolutely confused him. He didn't know what to do, but it was still a bit unpleasant to get that kind of gesture from a professional driver when you're just doing your hobby. And about 5 minutes after that bus had passed, a woman came up to me. I'd seen her watching me from further down the street. I think she was a worker in one of the local office buildings. And she came up and demanded to know if I was allowed to film in the street, which of course I am. So I explained, yeah, I'm just filming buses. And she went, yeah, but there's people as well. There's people about. And I said, well, it doesn't really matter. I'm standing in the public street. You're allowed to take a photo of anything you want. Buildings, buses, cars, you name it. Now, as you would expect from people like that who believe that they're right, she didn't really believe me. She kind of huffed and stormed off. And as she went, there were 3 teenage lads walking up, and she went, oh, be careful, there's a man taking pictures there. Which, is really unnecessary. I mean, to their credit, the lads looked at her like she got 3 heads, just kind of said whatever and walked off and didn't pay me any attention whatsoever. I wasn't filming at the time anyway because there were no buses around, so all the time she was talking to me, and while they were walking past, the camera wasn't rolling. So I wasn't actually taking any pictures at the time. But it's completely unnecessary, so I thought I'd do a quick video just to explain what you can and can't do really as a bus photographer. This that we're looking at now is from the Avon and Somerset Police website. It's not just their policy, it's UK law. It's just they've been proactive enough to put it on the website where you can see it. As you can see, it says there is no law preventing people from taking photographs in public. This includes taking photos of other people's children. If you are taking photographs from private land, you need to have the landowner's permission. Taking a photo of a person where they can expect privacy, such as inside their home or garden, is likely to cause a breach of privacy laws. Unless the images which have been taken are indecent, no one has the right to ask a photographer to stop, ask for a copy of the photos, or force a photographer to delete the photographs. So basically, if you're stood in a public place, such as the street, as I say, you can take a photo of anything you want at all. The outside of the buildings that are on the street, the cars going past, the buses going past. You can even take photos of people if you want to, although obviously as bus enthusiasts we're not doing that. People just tend to appear. Sometimes they're visible inside the bus as it goes past. Other times they appear in the background or walking down the pavement adjacent. I always try and stand on the edge of the curb so people don't get between me and the buses, because I don't really want people in my shots, to be honest. But even then, people often find a way to walk between you and the bus. They sometimes go in the road to walk around you, rather than using the pavement that you've left free of any obstruction. But anyway, so you are allowed to take anything as long as you're in a public area. You can also take photos of what would be classed as private property as long as you're standing in a public area. So, for example, the bus garage in Grimsby is right next to the street. The pavement goes past the doors of the garage buildings and across the entrance to the yard. So you can stand on the pavement and take photos of buses in the yard and in the depot buildings because you're standing in a public place. If there's anything the operator doesn't want you to see, in that case stagecoach, they would it's incumbent on them to park it where it can't be seen from the street, or to close the doors so that you can't take the photos. But as I say, as long as you're standing in a public place, not a problem. The same also applies to the inside of the bus. If you're standing on the street and the inside of the bus is visible in the photograph or the video you take, it doesn't matter because you're standing in a public place. What you can do is take photographs on private land without permission. So you can't walk into the depot and start taking photographs unless you've got the permission of the operator to do so. Similarly, inside the bus, you can't. A lot of people do take photos inside the buses and videos. I've done a couple of onboard videos myself in the past. But if the driver asks you to stop, you would have to do so because the inside of the bus is private property. And therefore, it's up to the driver, really. But as I say, if it's visible as it passes you on the street, as long as you're stood in the public street, it's not a problem. So what about the people who stray into the photos and videos that you take? Is that a problem? Well, no. As you can see from this photographer's website, the photographer in question has looked into the law in quite a lot more detail than I have. Is it illegal to take someone's photo without their permission? No, photography is not a crime. In general, you do not need permission to take someone's picture in the UK. And so long as you're on public land while you're doing so, you can snap away quite freely without risking running into any trouble with the law. From the same website as well, you've got there, photographers are able to take pictures in all public places, including photos of people for journalistic, editorial or art purposes, so long as they're not harassing members of the public to obtain the photographs. Under the Protection from Harassment Act 1997, you can be prosecuted if you are threatening, stalking, intimidating or causing distress to someone to obtain their photograph. Well, obviously, as a bus photographer, you're not intimidating people and doing stuff like that. You're taking photos of buses. One thing that's often quoted is GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations. Now, they don't stop you from taking photos in public. The law remains as stated on the police website there, that you're allowed to take photos of anything. As we said, if people get into your shots as well, it's not a problem. The only way GDPR would come in is if you're using the photos for commercial purposes. So, example, if you were going to sell them to like an advertising agency or something. But even then, there's a specific set of rules, set of criteria that needs to be met before you need the person's permission. And that is that the person in the image is recognisable. In other words, you can see the face clearly, and the person is the main subject of the image. So obviously, even if you're selling your bus photographs to a magazine or something, for example, or a book, or even to an advertising agency for advertising purposes, if they wanted such a thing, you'd be able to do so, because if there's a person in the background behind the bus or walking alongside it or whatever, the person is not the main subject of the image, the bus is. So then you don't need that person's permission to use the photo. The only other time you could possibly trigger GDPR is if you were to give away the person's details. So for example, if a bus drove past, you can see the driver and you go, oh yeah, that's Joe Bloggs, he lives at so-and-so, this is his address. If you did that in the voiceover or put a caption on the video or on your photo or whatever, that would be a breach of GDPR. But of course, you're not going to do that. You're not going to start revealing the name and address of anybody who appears in your video accidentally. So again, it would not apply. The issue with GDPR is a lot of people have heard about it, but most people don't actually know anything about it. And they just put two and two together and make about 6 million and decide that nobody can ever take the picture. But there is no expectation of privacy in a public place such as a street, and that includes if you're driving a bus down the street. There's no expectation of privacy. If you're in your own home or in your back garden and there's no public thoroughfare going past the garden, then you've got an expectation of privacy. People can't walk in and just start taking photos of you in your house or anything like that. But if you're out in a public street, there is no problem. In any case, most streets are covered by CCTV in town and city centres, and most shops, offices, factory units, a lot of private houses, etc. have got CCTV. A lot of cars have got dash cams. The buses have got CCTV cameras that record outside and in, and often feature the driver. The one on the platform will feature at least part of the driver driving along. There are video doorbells. Everybody's walking around with their phones taking selfies and snapshots of this, that and the other to put on social media. So you having your photo taken hundreds if not thousands of times a day anyway. So an enthusiast pointing the camera at you is not really making any difference. Where it gets a bit complicated for bus photographers is in bus stations. Now, bus stations are generally private land, and therefore different rules apply. Now, there are some bus stations where nobody cares if you go around taking photos as long as you stick to the walkways and don't put yourself at any risk. And there are some where the staff are not happy with people taking photographs. The advice I would give is just to basically respect the staff. If they tell you to stop taking photos, then do so, but just ask them where the private land ends, where the public pavement starts and where you can stand and take photographs. I personally don't tend to film inside bus stations anyway. I prefer to go on the public street outside and just film the exit or the entrance because you get better shots. Most bus stations nowadays, the photography is lousy anyway because of the design of them. There is a school of thought among lawyers and various other people who study the law and know about it that actually the public areas of bus stations could be classed as public property because the public are allowed to use them. And in many respects, the law hasn't kept pace with technology because, of course, a lot of the passengers waiting in the bus station will be taking selfies and taking snaps of the concourse so they can put on the social media, you know, I'm waiting for my bus to so-and-so, I'm going to see this, I'm doing that. So actually, there are probably hundreds of photographs taken every single day inside these bus stations on passengers' smartphones. And in that respect, it seems a bit unfair in a sense to tell an enthusiast to stop taking a picture of a bus when everybody around them is probably taking photos. But at the minute, as I say, bus stations generally are private property, and if the operators of that bus station are not happy with you taking photos in it, then you need to respect what they're saying. Something I didn't cover as well when I was on about standing in public places but taking photos of visible private property. The exceptions to that are Ministry of Defence land and certain high risk or sensitive government buildings. You're not allowed to take photos of those even if you stood on the street next to them. But there will be signs up in places like that saying that you can't photograph. It's also not a good idea to do things like stick your camera through the fence of a nuclear power station and start taking close-up shots, or begin to take close-up shots of CCTV cameras and security arrangements at places. But that's just common sense. A lot of the problems that bus enthusiasts get are just prejudice, basically. I went to the Cleethorpes Carnival Parade quite recently. For people not familiar, it's a typical parade. There's floats with various people from local charities and dance organisations and such like taking part. The lucky ones are riding on floats, the unlucky ones are having to walk or dance along the street. But as you would expect in 21st century Britain with any kind of event, there's a lot of people there with the phones out taking videos and photos for the social media, of people that they don't know that obviously taking part in the event. They're also capturing people stood in the crowd with them. But it's not a problem. They're covered by the same laws that allow us to take photos of buses. They're in a public place, so they can take photographs of anything. Where prejudice comes in, of course, is that it's seen as perfectly normal to take photographs of people taking part in an event to put on your Facebook or your X or Instagram, etc. Whereas people don't class bus enthusiasm as normal. If you're taking photos of buses, they tend to get a bit funny and suspicious and things. And that is just prejudice. It's not fair. And really, it needs to stop. We're told constantly in this country and in the world to be an individual, be yourself, do what makes you happy. And then you go out and do a hobby that you enjoy doing, and you just get a lot of hassle from people. But as I say, to reiterate, there you are from the police website. There is no law preventing people from taking photographs in public. So if you're filming and photographing buses in a public street, you are doing nothing wrong at all, and don't let people tell you otherwise. I'm going to leave you with this shot of a bus in Grimsby. This is the bus that the driver shouted at me from. I emailed Stagecoach, not as a complaint. I made clear it wasn't a complaint. I didn't want the driver getting into trouble. My dad was a bus driver. I know it can be a stressful job, and I know people have bad days. But this is a screenshot from the video I was taking of the bus in question. As I said, the driver was objecting to having his picture taken, but as you can see, he is completely invisible, or almost completely. You can just see part of his shirt. You can't see his face, you can't see any features about him at all. Between the darkness in the cab, the reflections on the windscreen, the mirror and the pillars, he is almost totally invisible. When he leaned out to shout at me, he would have become visible, but only the bus had pulled up next to me and I was already focusing towards the back of the bus at that time. So luckily for him, he didn't appear on camera, although, leaning out the window would have been a great way to actually feature on camera when he wasn't previously. So I emailed Stagecoach and said, will you please, I attached this photo and I said, will you please show him this just to show that he wasn't actually visible. So he's shouting and carrying on for nothing really, you can't see him anyway. And even if you could, as I say, it wouldn't be a problem. It's not a breach of GDPR. There is no expectation of privacy when you're driving a bus down a public street. So if you're a bus enthusiast watching this, enjoy your hobby. You're not doing anything wrong. Don't let people tell you that you are. Take care and enjoy yourself. In the unlikely event you're one of the people who likes to have a go at bus enthusiasts and you've watched the video this far, please stop it. Just be kind. They're not doing anything wrong. It's perfectly legal to indulge your hobby in the street as long as you're not hurting anybody, you're not causing an obstruction, etc., etc. So just be a bit more kind and just be nice to each other. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.